Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can see you, and
Okay.
we're going to let you take it away. I know we're running a little over, but let's try and keep it concise. But we're really looking forward to hearing you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Philip, for inviting me today. I was asked to present on two different topics: the profile of vapors and how e-cigarettes should be regulated. This is my disclosure slide. As an outline, I will present to you a comprehensive literature review of representative surveys in the general population, and also a comprehensive review of surveys in convenience samples of vapors. And then I will present how e-cigarettes are currently regulated, mainly in the US and in the European Union, and I'm going to talk about how it should be regulated in the future. You've been already told about the incredible increase in e-cigarette sales. This is the figure for the US. You see that it doubled or tripled every year since 2007, 2008, and for this year, the US market is probably going to reach $2 billion, $2,000 million. For your convenience, I listed the available surveys in representative samples of the general population here, and these surveys show that in the US, use of e-cigarettes was really marginal in the general population in 2009, and then it tripled or doubled every year. From these ASH reports in the UK, in current smokers, you also see that e-cigarette use almost doubled each year in recent years, and currently 11% of smokers in the UK use e-cigarettes. About age and gender, education and income, we have data from 6 surveys in representative samples of the general population, and compared with non-users, vapors or e-cigarette users tend to be younger, better educated, and have higher income, but there is no clear association between e-cigarette use and gender. The studies are listed here. Now, how many of those who try e-cigarettes out use them in the 30 days prior to the surveys? This was documented in 10 different surveys in representative samples of the general populations of the countries listed here on the slide. And interestingly, all the studies converge towards similar figures. 30 to 38% of those who try cigs said that they also used them in the past 30 days. Now, how many of the vapors how many of the people who ever tried e-cigarettes out say that they are using them daily at the time of the survey? Astonishingly, only 2 of the surveys in representative samples report figures on that, one in Switzerland and the other in the Czech Republic, and the 2 studies converge. 12 to 14% of those who ever tried e-cigarettes used them daily at the time of the surveys. Now, about experimentation and use by never smokers, this is documented in 11 surveys in representative samples from the countries listed here. Ever use in never smoker ranged from 0% to 3.8%, and the median across the surveys was 0.5% of ever use in never smokers. And use in the past 30 days in never smokers ranged from 0 to 2.2%, and the median across the surveys was 0.3% of never smokers who used e-cigs in the past 30 days. Daily use by never smokers was assessed in only 2 surveys in representative samples, one in the UK and the other in Switzerland, and to date, no daily use in never smokers has been reported in the peer-reviewed literature. It doesn't mean that it does not occur, but it has never been reported to date. Much has been said about this CDC press release and the MMWR report about surveys in the US between 2011 and 2013 in representative samples of middle and high school kids. The survey reported on overuse in these kids, which doubled between 2011 and 2012, and also it reported on use in the past 30 days, which also doubled and reached 2% in 2012. Then we have the CDC director, Tom Frieden, based on this report, and he said that many teens who start with e-cigarettes may be condemned to struggling with a lifelong addiction to nicotine and conventional cigarettes. Well, interestingly, in this report, there is absolutely no data on daily use of e-cigarettes in these kids, no data on addiction to e-cigarettes in these kids, and no data on progression from e-cigarettes trying to smoking. So actually, this press report, which has been quoted a lot of time, it was not based at all on the published data. Now, about the smoking status of vapors, this was documented in 8 surveys in representative samples of the general population, and in these surveys, the proportion of e-cigarette users was 2 to 8 times higher in current smokers than in former smokers, which means that most users are dual users. They use both e-cigarettes and cigarettes. From the UK Toolkit study, you see that this curve indicates the proportion of those trying to quit who used e-cigs to help them quit. And you can see that in the past year only, there's a tremendous increase in those who used e-cigs during quit attempts. About 1/3 today of quit attempts in the UK are made with e-cigs. This is a list of the 15 surveys in convenience samples of users. Of course, these are not representative samples, so the results may not be generalizable to all vapors and should be interpreted with caution. In daily users puffed on average 120 to 2,030 times per day on their e-cigarettes. Daily users spend $33 in one study and $52 in another study per month on e-cigarettes. It's a lot cheaper for the same number of puffs. About all daily users use e-cigs containing nicotine, so we are speaking about nicotine delivery devices. Interestingly, the most popular nicotine concentration in e-liquids in various studies converged. It's 18 milligrams per milliliter, the average concentration. And the most popular flavors in order of popularity are tobacco, mint, and fruit. Dual users. So in dual users, the number of cigarettes per day when vaping is lower than the number of cigarettes per day when they first started to vape. I found 2 studies that reported both the number of cigarettes per day before these smokers started to vape and now at the time of the survey. And you see that in both surveys, there's a substantial decrease in the number of cigarettes per day. Perceived effects on smoking reduction and cessation were reported in 8 studies in convenience samples of vapors, and you see that most ex-smokers said that e-cigs helped them quit smoking, and about 2/3 or even more current smokers, about 2/3 or more of the current smokers said that e-cigs helped them reduce the number of cigarettes per day. Addictiveness, are they addictive, these e-cigs? This was reported in 4 studies, and e-cigs were perceived as less addictive than cigarettes. The time between waking up and first use, which is a good indicator of dependence, was longer for e-cigs than for cigarettes, and only 18% craved e-cigs as much as tobacco. The studies are listed here. So e-cigs are less addictive. And remember that in the definition of addiction, there are two elements: compulsive use, in spite of the adverse consequences for the user's health, family, or social life, and the adverse consequences element is not proven so far, I think. So to summarize, e-cigs are mainly used by current and former smokers as a cheaper and safer alternative to tobacco. Most users report that e-cigs helps them quit or reduce. Regular use in non-smoker has not been documented so far, and e-cigs are less addictive than cigarettes. Now I will talk about regulation. I think that sometimes when we speak about regulation, some people lose the objective. The objective of regulation, I think, is to decrease the number of cases of disease and death in the population, and to protect the freedom of citizens, their freedom of choice. It's also an important point. And regulation should not cover just e-cigs, but also next generation products that may contain nicotine but are not e-cigs, new products to come. E-cigs are currently regulated either as consumer products or as tobacco products, and not regulated as medicines in any country. As was said previously, in the US, the FDA currently does not regulate e-cigs as drugs, but there is state and local regulations. Not that there's no regulation at all. There is local regulation, state regulation about, for instance, bans in public health or sales to minors, etc. The deeming regulation is due in October this month. In the European Union, a very important vote of the EU Parliament will take place next week on October 8 on the Tobacco Products Directive. It's an extremely important vote. They're probably going to regulate e-cigs as medicines. They are saying that it's going to be a light touch regulation. I think there is no such thing as light touch regulation. Regulation of medicines is not light touched at all. So these two decisions, the FDA regulation in October and the EU Parliament vote, are extraordinarily important, because once written, these laws will be very hard, these regulations will be very hard to change. Currently, there is a very intensive lobbying of the FDA and of the EU Parliament. And in general, not specifically for the e-cigs, but in general, I think that governments and parliaments are excessively responsive to special interests rather than to the general interest. And as a result, almost any regulation that comes out will favor those who are best at lobbying, that is big tobacco and big pharma. And financial analysts, even before seeing this regulation, already say that future regulation will be favorable to big tobacco and big pharma if they step in. An important point, thank you, Natalie, for mentioning this to me, is that regulations will differ in every country, because regulations will depend on the specific history of tobacco regulation in each country, on the political process, on the weight of lobbies, on the stage of development of the e-cig market in each country. So regulations are not going to be uniform, they're going to vary. The aim of regulation of e-cigs as a tobacco product would be to offer consumers the same level of protection as for tobacco products. That is, regulation of the contents and additives, bans of use in public place, restrictions on advertisement, sales restrictions to minors, etc. The problems with tobacco regulation is that e-cigs do not contain tobacco, even though nicotine is extracted from tobacco, so it's not tobacco. And although I think that the measures used to control tobacco are excessive, they are disproportionate. The bans in public places, well, there's no evidence that passive vaping is toxic or that vaping in public encourages smoking. Advertising bans, I think there's no evidence that the product is toxic in humans. We've seen presentations, comprehensive reports of the literature or not, but in humans I don't think it's proven that it's toxic for the moment. There's no evidence that non-smokers become regular users. Sales restrictions to minors who smoke, well, minors can buy nicotine gums and patches, so why shouldn't they buy also e-cigarettes if they want to use them to quit smoking? And if e-cigs protects adults against smoking, why wouldn't they protect minors against smoking too. Regulation as medicine. The aim is to give consumers the same level of protection as for medicine, with efficacy data, safety, toxicity data, quality requirements for the stability of the products, the protection of young non-smokers, etc. There's a long list of problems with medicine regulation. First, e-cigs are not medicines. As long as there is no therapeutic claim, they are not medicines. For this reason, medicine regulation has been and will be challenged in court, and much of the time this regulation has been, these medicines regulation have not held in court. Mostly, this creates an inequality with tobacco, and it makes e-cigs less competitive. They can't compete with tobacco. You cannot bind the feet of half of the players on the football ground and hope that they will win the football part. And also, I think that proponents of medicines regulation have made an inadequate impact assessment. It will be tremendously costly to obtain drug approval. There are also administrative barriers. So the small manufacturers and also many products will disappear. The most innovative ones, in particular the Chinese ones, they just can't. They will disappear. And only big tobacco will survive, that are perfectly ready. They already have products that are almost at the level of medicines regulation, so they are ready. And big pharma will survive if they step in. They have not at this moment. Of course, the prices of the products will increase tremendously, making them less available. Importantly, medicines regulation will kill innovation. Take the nicotine gum and the nicotine patch. These products have been invented in the 1970s, and since then they are frozen in the same stage of development. It's just too costly for manufacturers to improve the products once they are approved. So once a product is approved, it is fossilized, frozen in the stage when it was approved, and we have seen that current e-cigarettes are not perfect. They do not deliver enough nicotine. They do not deliver nicotine quickly enough. So they still need to improve. It would be a bad idea to stop the innovation now. Almost all flavors will be banned. There will be excessive restrictions on marketing. A ban of unlicensed products is incompatible with quality control of these products. No tax can be raised on banned products. And also it sends a wrong message about nicotine. It says that nicotine at this dosage is dangerous, whereas it is not at this dosage. Internet and high street shops will close, and this will have a negative impact on employment. A lot of people work in this field. They will lose their jobs. Importantly also, medicines regulation is contrary to constitutional principles of free market, because it eliminates with no good reason a competitor. And these free market principles are written in the constitutions in democratic countries. There's a lack of popular support for this measure, and I think it's not viable long term in a democracy. The ban of unlicensed products cannot be enforced. Enforcement will be very costly, very ineffective. It won't take place. Internet sales will continue, and this will favor the development of homemade brews, homemade e-cigs, which are unsafe. It will stimulate the black market. So there are two main consequences of tobacco or medicines regulation. One, there will be fewer users, fewer smokers will quit, and more will die. And two, I think only big tobacco will survive in this market. Regulation as a consumer product, as a general consumer product, well, the aim here is to offer consumers the same level of protection as for many other products like food, cosmetics, chemicals, electrical devices, etc. In the EU, there are already a number of directives and laws that already apply to e-cigarettes, and these are listed in the documents recently published by Clive Bates and Jerry Stimson. There are a lot of directives in the EU covering safety. There's the RAPEX system, the alerts for adverse events. Chemical safety, like the directive on hazardous substances, directives on electrical safety, packaging, labeling, weights and measures, commercial practice, advertising, data protection, etc. There are already a whole range of directives that regulate this product. It is already regulated. So first, I think that we should apply and enforce existing laws and directives. And if this is not sufficient, then, if necessary, we should create a specific category or specific norms for recreational nicotine devices that will cover the manufacturing process, the components, the e-liquid and vapor content, advertisement, sales to minors, etc. But this does not require regulation of e-cigs as medicines or as tobacco. We could and should also create an earmarked tax on e-cigs to fund research. There's an urgent need for more research, and also to fund the education of the public, of doctors, of journalists, of policymakers, legislators, etc. To conclude, I think that e-cigs are actually a major innovation or even a revolution in our field that has the potential to save many lives. Regulators should really have a balanced approach. They should balance the public health impact versus the yet unproven risks of these products. And very importantly, I think that because this product is used mainly by current smokers and by past smokers, relative risk is relevant compared with tobacco, not absolute risk. This is an extremely important point. I think that regulation as medicines or tobacco is excessive, disproportionate. It will result in the prohibition of unlicensed products, and this is neither feasible, nor desirable, nor realistic. And the main danger for public health currently is excessive regulation, not e-cigs. Excessive regulation, I think, represents a real danger for the health of the public. Clearly, current laws cannot survive. These laws allow nicotine only in tobacco, which is deadly dangerous, and in medications like the gum and the patch, which are not appealing to users, not very effective in the long term. This cannot survive. The success of e-cigarettes will force these laws to change, to accommodate e-cigarettes and also next generation products, new products that we do not know yet, that are under development, that will also provide nicotine. And I think that one of the most important public health debates in recent decades, really, is to redefine the place of nicotine in society and in the law and make room for recreational nicotine products. This is a challenge. It will stimulate very, very hot debates, but I actually think it's one of the most important public health debates in recent decades, to redefine the place of nicotine in society and in the law and make room for recreational nicotine products. Thank you for your attention.